I wanted to be at Texas State. I chose to be at Texas State. I'm from Texas. That was important to me. I always knew if the right guy got this job, you better watch out.
You better watch out. This is Win Now or Get Bent, episode 221. If you don't already know, I'm Keff Ciardello, coming to you on Thursday, January 29th, and we've got a depth chart prediction for you. A way too early depth chart prediction for the 2026 Texas State football team. But after 38 new players signed between December and January, December with high school and JUCO players, in January 19 transfer portal players added, Texas State rosters almost locked into place. Before, we used to have to wait until after spring football to kind of do these depth chart predictions, and I'll have another one after spring football, of course. But it was harder to do one of these because there was always that transfer portal window after spring, so you never knew who was coming in, who was leaving, what this roster is going to look at. And now with the rule where everyone's roster is locked at 105 players, used to be that you could have 85 scholarship players and then unlimited walk-ons. Now you can give up to 105 scholarships, but you can't have those unlimited walk-ons anymore. You don't have to give 105 scholarships, but whether it's walk-ons or scholarships, everyone's roster is limited to 105. And now that they have that, and I was adding these 38 players that Texas State signed between December and January, and I have 100 players throughout the depth chart. 100 players plus a handful of other players. I'm like, are these guys coming back? Who knows? It's unclear with a handful of them. But 100 players for sure we know are coming back, are signed to this team. That's pretty crazy. Before spring football, before even the official National Signing Day, what used to be the big kahuna, the big signing day in February, is now it's kind of, whatever. The Bobcats may sign one or two guys there, but most of the high school players sign in December now. But this roster is pretty locked in. So I've got some good stuff for you on that front, talking about this Texas State depth chart, really especially after G.J. Kinney gave that great press conference last week. It was about 45 minutes long. I tweeted a little bit about it. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, winnoworgetbent.com, or I'm sorry, youtube.com/winnoworgetbent, like, subscribe, comment. I threw up some shorts from that press conference as well, just some clips up there that you can check out. But we'll talk all about that. I got some notes from that press conference, and then we'll do a depth chart prediction for 2026 Texas State football, the inaugural Pac-12 season. Exciting stuff coming up for the Bobcats. But before we get there, this episode is brought to you by the Galindo Collective, TGC LLC, thegalindocollective.com. That's GALINDO, thegalindocollective.com. A team of professional consultants dedicated to helping others realize their business potential through people, planning, and practice. Their services cover a wide range of areas such as business strategy, marketing, human resources, and financial planning. If you own property or a business and want to maximize its profitability, contact TGC at thegalindocollective.com and follow their social media platforms on Twitter at TGC_LLC and on Instagram and Facebook at The Galindo Collective. Shout out to my guy, Rick Galindo, a true Texas State sicko, a Texas State grad. He has been partnered up with Win Now or Get Bent for 3 seasons now. So shout out to The Galindo Collective. Go check them out, thegalindocollective.com. That's GALINDO, thegalindocollective.com. All right, let's get to these Bobcats. I opened up talking a little bit about the press conference G.J. Kinney gave last week. He always does these great press conferences after signing a bunch of players. He did one in December. He did it again last week. He's done it his entire time at Texas State, where he comes up to the podium, and the first 20 minutes is him just rattling off each name and talking about what he knows about them, what he liked about them, why he recruited them, about their family, about their measurables. It's always impressive to me, his recall, especially because you look at the notes when he's up there at the podium, and it's just a list of names, and he's just rattling them off like, oh yeah, this player, this guy, William Boone, he has 11-inch hands, I'm always impressed with it, how close he is to recruiting, and you can tell how big their recruiting classes have been each 3 off seasons that G.J. Kinney has been here. This 38 player one is actually on the smaller side. I think back to the very first one the 2023 offseason where he had like over 50 players. It was pretty similar in the 2024 offseason. So this is what they do. They go and get a lot of players. But he has real intimate knowledge on all the players. But he also went into the new defensive hires for the coaching staff, talking about some of these new players or these new coaches as well, and what their roles are going to entail and why he brought them in. So I'll start there when I talk about the press conference. But again, we've got some shorts on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/windhourgetbent. You can see the shorts there. I'll throw some more up there as well. We had that whole winter storm. I made a bunch of clips, and then, we were kind of batting down the hatches in our household over the last few days with all this ice. Wasn't as bad as they said it was going to be, though, huh? Still not great. Make sure you drip those faucets, that's for sure. But yeah, we'll check. You can check that out. You can also go to the Texas State Athletics YouTube channel, and they'll have the entire press conference, 45 minutes of it, through a link on Twitter if you're on there with it. But we'll start with what G.J. Kinney talking about the interview process and bringing in these other coaches. He mentioned Tanner Burns helped out with the interviews. Tanner Burns and G.J. Kinney, they go way back. They've been friends for a while. They go on vacations with each other. Tanner Burns, it was his first season in coordinating the special teams units for Texas State to some success, I'd say. Great job kicking from Tyler Robles, who's now out. Some great returns from Jalen Jenkins. Saw some good stuff from special teams. But Tanner Burns, with the close relationship with G.J. Kinney, he was helping him out in the interviews. It seems like that's his closest confidant, his right-hand man, if you will. So he was in the interview process with him. He was also given an additional role. He was doing Tanner Burns was special teams coordinator last year. He's still special teams coordinator, but he will also be taking on safeties as well with Dexter McCoyle, the former defense coordinator. He was also the safeties coach. So Tanner Burns will take over that role. But what Kinney and Burns liked when interviewing Wyndham, they said he interviewed a lot of people. What he really liked was how multiple his scheme was. That's something we talked about before when the Wyndham hire, when that news first started to leak out before the bowl game. When you look at his defense at South Alabama, how multiple it was. Go from a 4 down front, a 4-2-5 look, or a 3-3-5. You'd even see some 4-3 in there. There wasn't really like a set base with Will Wyndham's defense. They're just very, very multiple, and that's something that it seemed that attracted Kinney and Burns when they were looking at Will Wyndham to be the defensive coordinator, just to change it up a lot. We remember that 4-2-5 man coverage. That was around the entirety of G.J. Kinney's first 3 years. They started to relent on it and change it up the last few games, and it ended up 4-game winning streak to end the season, including the bowl game for Texas State. So changing up and being more multiple, that seemed to really help out. Even though Texas State, this is what G.J. Kinney was saying, even though Texas State beat South Alabama with Will Wyndham there the last 3 seasons, he said it was always a pain to scheme for Wyndham's defenses, that they were just very complex, so they had to come up with a really good plan to play against it. You look at South Alabama and what you're able to do there. Imagine you come to Texas State, a little bit better resources, able to get a little more leeway in recruiting, and maybe that complex defense will pay more dividends with less scoring and things like that with the Bobcats. That was one thing that G.J. Kinney said a lot in that press conference when talking about this transfer portal class and what they were able to do, how they were able to do so much more this year compared to just even last season, how the support and the resources has increased so much. He profusely thanked Dr. Kelly Damphus, the school president, Don Coryell, the athletics director, even talked about Travis Comer, and Kelsey Solis, I believe, who's in charge of a lot of stuff as well around the administration. Just thanking them for the resources that they were able to get, some NIL deals. I assume that's what a lot of that means, and that paid off into getting 19 really good players out of the transfer portal, and probably able to go get a competitor in the Sun Belt Conference and go grab their DC. Obviously, they're not in the Sun Belt anymore, but to go get a guy out of the Sun Belt against a peer, instead of having to do like a call-up and everything from a lower level, you would assume that the resources are much better. Bringing in a Will Wyndham and also bringing in a Marcus Patton, the next guy that G.J. Kinney was talking about. He was the DC at Sac State. Now he's coming in. He's going to be working with corners while Burns takes over the safety. He's doing working with the DBs, some co-DC work, I'm sure. But Kinney mentioned that Darren Sproles, his former teammate with the Philadelphia Eagles, signed off on Marcus Patton. If any of you remember Darren Sproles, the little speedster, he was a shorter player, but man, he could take off and really do some damage. Played for the Eagles, the Chargers. I remember him on the Chargers a lot too. But he signed off on Marcus Patton, so that's a pretty good reference on a resume, I'd say. Darren Sproles. But yeah, like I mentioned, he has defensive coordinator experience. So to get a guy who was a pretty good defensive coordinator at Sac State at the FCS level to come up to the FBS level and be willing to take on an assistant role, I'm sure he's going to have a lot of say in the process when it comes to this defense and everything. But I think that says a lot about Texas State's resources, and that's why G.J. Kinney spent much of that 45-minute press conference commending the resources and the increase that was there. Marcus Patton, a walk-on at K-State for Bill Snyder back in the day, was a walk-on, earned a scholarship. I think that says a lot about his character as well, going back to his playing days. Coach Gestorb, Coach G, I was glad to hear G.J. Kinney also not know his name very well, went with Coach G. We'll go with Coach G as well. Successful defensive line, coached every stop. That's what he said he liked about him. Lots of energy. Said when he shook his hand, he felt like his hand was going to break. He's a big guy. Lots of energy. So excited to see what Coach G does out there. You can already see it pay some dividends in recruiting when we were talking about the 11 defensive linemen added from in this 38-man class. 11 of them are defensive line, 6 of them in the transfer portal alone after Coach G got there, including a really good player that I was talking about earlier that we will bring up here in a sec. The one thing he emphasized, that G.J. Kinney emphasized a lot in the press conference, was the retention that they had of Brad Jackson, Bo Sparks, Chris Don, Greg Burrell, Jalen Jenkins, Sully Burns, Justin DeLeon. Apparently those were 2 guys who had some suitors as well. Kylan Evans, getting Kylan Evans to come back after kind of a little bit of a tough season after he broke through into the rotation, but still a talented receiver, has some great height. He was saying, as far as the transfer portal was concerned, this is a quote from G.J. Kinney, we didn't have a ton of spots on offense. Big emphasis on defense. Number one focus was the defensive line, as we mentioned earlier. A lot of focus on that defensive line. He says, going into year 4, keeping a bunch of our coaches helps. Most of the offensive staff, keeping Brett Huth, the strength and conditioning coach, was huge. Commitment from Kelly and Don, Dr. Kelly Danforth, school president, Don Correal, AD. Roster management to resource support and the retention of coaches has been the biggest difference. I feel like those 3 things right there, roster management, resource support, and retention of coaches, it's massive for Texas State. When you look at 2026 going into the Pac-12 and everything, and you look at those 3 things, I touched on it a little bit on the last episode, where it just feels like 2026 is just the accumulation of everything coming together for G.J. Kinney and this staff. It's going to be, even when you think about it, it's going to be the first time that G.J. Kinney is going to have the same quarterback for consecutive seasons going into it. It was T.J. Finley the first season, then we had Jordan McLeod, then we had Brad Jackson getting some experience as a redshirt freshman. Now you have an experienced quarterback who knows the system, who's been very well proven after his first year. To look at that, to look at the resource increase, the excitement that's going to come with going to the Pac-12. There's just it feels like it's going to be such a big season for Texas State. We're so far away. The off season just started officially last week, and I am already very excited. Especially when you look at that non-conference schedule, that all Texas non-conference schedule, starting the season with Texas. Then you've got Incarnate Word, UNT, UTSA, and then you start the excitement of the Pac-12. And it just feels like it's going to be such a big season for the Bobcats. And especially when I piece together this roster this early, all the way in January, piecing together this roster and knowing that, like, okay, there's not going to be another transfer portal window where some of these players that we're excited about are all of a sudden going to leave. Because we saw that even last year where they got there in January and they were gone by May. I mean, that's happened to a handful of players that we were really excited about. One I think about is Shamar Kirk coming over from Miami. I meant to check in and see how his season went, but I was pretty excited about him. But yes, roster management, resource support, retention of coaches. All of that is just so positive for the Bobcats. He also mentioned lost a lot of really good players from last year. Obviously, you got Ishmati, you've got Joshua Eaton, you've got Terry Webb. A lot of really good players left. And from the way G.J. Kinney was talking, they would have been able to keep some of those players, retain some of them with how much the support has increased this season. I was talking about the Pac-12 and how they've already started some recruiting battles with the Pac-12 teams. It said one thing he noticed is there's a lot of money in the Pac-12. So a lot of these other teams are spending. I know somebody sent me a graphic, LA Nation on Twitter. Shout out to LA Nation. I don't know. I meant to respond to the DM and inquiry that you tossed at me, but it seemed like there was a college, there was a college class that was looking at all of the budgets of the new Pac-12 teams, the total athletic budget for the administrations, and Texas State was at the very bottom at like $47.2 million for an annual budget for the athletics department at the bottom of the Pac-12. So this is a different deal. We're leaving the Sun Belt where you had ULM and some of these other programs that had non-existent budgets to now Texas State has the lowest budget. So things are you can see that the administration already realizes this with the resource increase and the support increase and the push to get more NIL, or not NIL, but more donations that, probably facilitate to NIL and rev share and all of that. You see the 100K match. I'm sure a lot of you saw that, where if you donate 100K to Texas State, there's another donor that will match that 100K donation, and to see some people kind of reverberate off of that or bounce off of that from each other, you just see the push happening, that Texas State is very much aware that they're switching leagues and things are going to be quite different. He says he's excited about having a different makeup, though, than over the West Coast teams. I don't know if that was a shot at the West Coast teams or just pointing out they're going to be a little different, a little more unique than some of these other teams over there. But I like that. It felt like you put a little mustard on that, these West Coast teams. I'm ready. We'll start that rivalry. We'll be the Texas stepchild of the Pac-12. When asked about the offensive line, very confident about the offensive line. I appreciated his confidence. He says, the offensive line has been a question every year I've been here, and we continue to have the best offensive line in the conference. And he's not wrong. Every year it's like, Bray Walker's leaving, Caleb Johnson's leaving. Oh, now we have this year it's Dorian Strawn, Talik Lockett. You have these players that leave, and it's like, how are they going to replace it? And they always replace it. Jordan Shoemaker, the offensive line coach, always does a great job of retooling this offensive line, whether it's players they move up like Justin DeLeon, who they developed over a few years and then they moved him up, or they go out and they get some splashy transfer portal guys like William Boone, Jalen Early, some of these other guys we're going to talk about that they're bringing in, Amari Smith. They're bringing in some good offensive linemen. I think they're going to be at full force at that position. Jumping ahead of myself for the depth chart prediction. But this is also what I found interesting. He talked about how open he was in this press conference. Half the things I said this year I wouldn't have said last year because of the second portal window. They didn't do third down or red zone last spring because he didn't know who was going to be on the team. So that second portal window closing allowed G.J. Kinney to tell us a lot more, reveal a lot more. Even that third down and red zone note that he hasn't said until this moment, almost a year removed from spring, they weren't working on those things because he wasn't sure who his personnel was going to be. A lot of praise for Jaden Lawton and Jaden Bradley. Jaden Bradley, he was a true freshman safety last year, didn't get in there, but a pretty highly coveted recruit. And Jaden Lawton as well, highly coveted recruit. Talked about him quite a bit at that corner position and all the offers that he had. One last note on it. He mentioned building chemistry through hard work. So he's saying that talking about how this semester is going to be really hard for all these new players. He wants to build adversity through chemistry, was kind of a way he put it, more than just hanging out, but making these guys work really hard, specifically with Brett Huth, the strength and conditioning coach, which is pretty underrated how they've been able to hold on to him. This is the 4th season coming up for Coach Huth, strength and conditioning coach. You see a lot of injuries around the country. Shoot, even before Brett Huth got here, there was quite a few season-ending injuries and just all these little flare-ups. And, knock on wood. I don't have any wood in here, but knock on wood saying this. The Bobcats have been really healthy, relatively so, I would say. Football comparatively, I would say. They've been really healthy during G.J. Kinney. In years prior, we'd seen some of these campaigns where it'd be multiple players with season-ending injuries. I can think of a couple different years where it was in double digits of players who tore ACLs or what have you, just an injury that wiped them out for the whole season. It was really just a handful. I think of like Will Mitchell was one guy. Trez Moore was a guy who was hurt before this season. Jolazin Landry got hurt like in the first half of the first game. But really minimal as far as those big injuries. And a lot of that is strength and conditioning in the offseason and what they do, because they work hard. They work their tails off. That's for sure. And he had notes for each of the 19 individual players from the transfer portal. I made notes for each one that he said, but I'll wait to go through this depth chart. Because like I said, 100 players that I already have lined up for you on this depth chart. And I listed out each position. I went ahead and just did all 100. We'll kind of, obviously the first 2-3 names we'll name are going to be the starters or the guys in the immediate rotation. But I went ahead and listed out every single position just to kind of go through, and I wanted to see whether they're solid or so-so. Those were kind of my grades for what I put for each position. If this position is solid or if it's so-so, it might need some work, maybe an extra guy before the signing day comes up, or who knows what they're able to do. I know with the transfer portal, there is no limit. So if a player is in the transfer portal, they entered it before that deadline, you can still, I'm pretty sure, technically bring them in. So who knows? There might be some positions that need some work. But we'll start at the very top, like we always do with these position talks. Quarterback. I gave it a solid. I might have said so-so before all the transfer portal class came in, but they were able to do some work. Brad Jackson, obviously, that's the number one quarterback. That's your guy returning. They were able to retain him. It's going to be his 3rd season as a Texas State Bobcat. What a terrific year as a first-year starter for him. I mean, he's proven to be a 4K quarterback, and by that I mean like he's gonna do 3,500 yards and another 500 rushing for that 4K total yards. He's proven to just be a really great asset that I'm sure could have gotten a lot of money in the transfer portal, but he loves Texas State, loves playing for G.J. Kinney, and he's back. So it's big time for Texas State to get Brad Jackson back, and I feel like that really set the tone for a Bo Sparks to come back, for a Greg Burrell, Chris Don, Sully Burns, these other guys to come back. Him saying, I'm back. I mean, how can you not have confidence in this team knowing that the starting quarterback is back? But number 2 on the quarterback depth chart, Shaker Reisig, transfer portal player coming over from Boston College. I talked a lot about him on the last episode, how impressed I am with his film, the sliding doors between him and Bird Ficklin, the Utah quarterback, two guys competing out of the Oklahoma ranks. G.J. Kinney said he's a very serious quarterback, tried to get him to laugh, couldn't get him to laugh. He's just very serious, all about ball, down to compete, knowing coming into Texas State, okay, they have their starters set. I'm going to transfer in, but hopefully I get an opportunity down the road with an offense that has proven to be very favorable to quarterbacks. I feel like it's pretty smart for if you're a young quarterback to stay in the system and to continue to learn, like Shaker Reisig. Below Reisig, though, Gavin Parkhurst. He was a true freshman this past season. Didn't get into a game except for the bowl game. Just had some handoffs. Nothing too big from Gavin Parkhurst. But he's a bigger guy, 6'3", big arm on him. I think he's got a lot of potential going forward. And then Easton Webb, he'll be coming up as a true freshman. He was just signed. They signed him back in December. He's a two-way sport guy. He's going to play some baseball as well. So I imagine that he's going to take a red shirt in football this upcoming season and learn and develop, similar to what Gavin Parkhurst did. But it is interesting to look at this quarterback room, and Brad Jackson's now the elder statesman. Before last season, there was 3 transfers that came in, so there was some experienced guys behind him. But now you look at it, and he's the guy with the most experience, with the most playing time, with the most years in college even. I mean, Reisig was a true freshman last year. Brad Jackson just finished his redshirt season, so pretty interesting stuff. But Reisig at Boston College, 10 for 19, 141 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. So he got in there, played a little bit as a true freshman, just not a whole lot. Next up, running back. I've given him a solid grading here. Even though there's only 5 that I have for them, I know G.J. Kinney likes to have a lot more. Can imagine that there might be some more, 1 or 2 added, that likes to get up there around 7 running backs. But they've got 5 running backs in this running back room that can really go, starting at the top with Greg Burrell. Of course, we all remember Greg Burrell was backing up Lincoln Perry, but was great off the bench coming in there. Almost 6 yards a carry for him. Going to be the starter, going to be the bell cow going into 2026. Jalen Jenkins, he didn't have the carries for the last 7 games before the bowl game, was doing a lot of work on special teams, the 100-yard kickoff return for Jalen Jenkins, but a lot of those runs were split between Lincoln Perry and Greg Burrell, and he missed out on offense. I have a feeling that's not going to be the case in 2026. He's going to get a lot more carries. They're able to convince him. Both players, Greg Burrell and Jalen Jenkins, entered the portal and hopped back out of the portal. I was glad for Jenkins. I don't know if you remember after the bowl game episode that I was talking about, where immediately after the game, he's on the sideline talking with his family. And I go, Jenkins, you coming back next year? You're going to be back? And he said, absolutely, I'll be back. He was emphatic. He was confident about it. And then a few hours later, he announced he was in the portal. So who knows? Maybe that was some negotiation, what was happening there. But Jalen Jenkins, he is back. Tajee Atkins as well. This might be a name that you might have forgotten. That's the 3rd running back I have coming out of this room. Tajee Atkins. He was a Rice transfer. Didn't play his first year. Didn't play a whole lot at Rice his freshman year. He's coming into his 3rd year in college. I imagine he will get more looks coming up. Below him, Cole Pryor. He was Brad Jackson's teammate in high school, if I have that right. Reagan High School guy. He was a true freshman this past season. We didn't see him, but we saw a pretty talented player coming out of high school. And we know, I've talked about this before, G.J. Kinney and these guys, they don't like to play true freshmen. It has to be a pretty special true freshman to get in there and break the rotation. So it'll, but I imagine Cole Pryor will get a few more looks. But speaking of true freshmen, Gentavious Harris coming in from Trinity High School. He's, like I was saying, it's not likely he's going to get a ton of playing time either coming up this season, but he's a pretty terrific player. I loved his huddle, one of my favorite huddles of all the high school players coming in. And my question mark player, I listed the 5, but a question mark player is Torrance Burgess. I know he should be done with his eligibility, but I know he also got hurt. I don't know if there's a medical waiver that they're trying for or what have you, but that's another player that might be added to the running back room. Not sure at this moment. Let's go to wide receiver. I have 12 listed. I didn't designate them as a wide receiver or slot receiver or anything like that. I just put all 12 into one group, and we'll talk about all 12. Usually when they roll out and they start their base wide receiver units, 3 wide receivers. So the first 3 I name are likely the starters. 12 listed, but I have another 3 that might still be on roster, unclear, that we will talk about. Bo Sparks, we know Bo Sparks. Bo Sparks and Chris Don, those are your definite 1-2 punch at wide receiver. The only team in FBS to have 2,000-yard wide receivers this past season, Texas State, with Bo Sparks and Chris Don. When we talk about retention, that is some of the biggest steps right there, was getting Bo Sparks and Chris Don. But the 3rd receiver I have is going to be a new player, Zachariah Sample, coming over from Arizona State. He played 1 season, got in there on punt return. A terrific player coming back to Texas. G.J. Kinney said that Kenny Dillingham said of Zacharias Sample. He'll be the fastest player on your team. So I think that's really high praise. Excited to see Zacharias Sample get in there. Below, right coming off the bench, my first player off the bench, I have Lakelian Graves, the Kilgore wide receiver, the first 4-star for Texas State coming out of high school. He is available for spring practice. He is here on campus. So I think that goes a long way for him getting onto the field and getting some playing time as a true freshman. I mentioned they don't love playing true freshmen. They like to develop them a little bit. But you look at the players like Chris Don was able to get in there a little bit as a true freshman. I could see the same thing for Lakelian Graves, especially with that height, looking at the red zone and what they need to do there, having a player of that caliber. How can you not roll him out there and see what he's got to offer? But another tall target, Kylan Evans, talked a little bit about him earlier. He'll be back. I have him as one of the immediate backups. The next players I'm going to name are names you may not recognize but have been on roster for a little bit. Jordan Martin, Skylar Lewis, and Tucker Casano. All of them are young players that haven't broken through the rotation. They are going to be back on this team. I remember Jordan Martin looking really big in fall camp, just muscular, definitely put on some size since getting in from high school. And then Skylar Lewis, Tucker Casano are taller targets as well, like Kylan Evans and Lakelian Graves. It's been really hard for Texas State to get receivers over 6 foot, so I imagine those guys are going to get in there. Some true freshmen that might see some playing time as well. Blake McLean, he graduated early. He is there for the spring as well. Damian Crow, same situation. Both those two players will be participating in spring practice. And then Davian Jackson, probably should put him a little higher on this. He's coming over from Mississippi State. He's a speedster. He's a player that, let me see what my notes from GJ Kinney, what he said about Davian Jackson. He's a developmental player, but really fast, can play wide receiver, running back, or even DB. That was the note I wanted to add. That's why I have him at the bottom at the wide receiver note, is they might get experimental and try him at defensive back, which when we get to defensive back might not be a bad idea. They might be lacking a little bit there. And then also Xavier Warren, true freshman coming over from Georgetown, a near 4-star player, was a 4-star for a while, and then he committed Texas State and moved down to a 3-star. I think there's, some shenanigans there, but we won't get into that. Xavier Warren, though, he won't be here for spring practice, so that's why I have him kind of at the bottom of the 12-man wide receiver room. But some players that might still be around, Tyron Smith, if you remember him, speedster, came over from UTEP, played one season. We didn't see him a whole lot. Ty Mims, player who was pretty predominantly displayed on Southern Miss offense for a while, came to Texas State, and we didn't see much of him. And then Julius Spencer was a true freshman this past season, taller receiver. Didn't see him. I've seen some reports that Spencer is in the transfer portal, so not looking like he's back. I just haven't confirmed it myself. But those last 3 receivers, they may still be around, so they may have as many as 15 for this wide receiver room. I'm giving it a solid designation for that. I think they have some really good players. It's hard not to give it solid when you look at the top and you look at those guys, but it's the same situation as kind of the quarterback room, where you see a lot of young guys that we haven't seen go out there that have a lot of potential below in the depth chart. Tight end, very solid. They have 7 tight ends. They're losing Titus Lyons. That's the big one that graduated. He was here for a long time. It's nice to see him get his 3 touchdowns this past season at tight end. We have Blake Smith coming back. Ty Stammy, the 6'7", big, tall guy. Cole Snodgrass, they just put him on scholarship. He's the TCU transfer. Those 3, I think you're going to see those 3 quite a bit. They'll even have some 12 personnel where they do play 2 tight ends, where they use them as blockers. They'll have 2 tight ends there, and they're in there as blockers, just some extra push at the end of the line next to the tackles. So I think you're going to see a lot of at least 2 to even 3 out there quite a bit rotating in. Some guys we may not see as much but are young and up and coming. Jake Simpson has been here for a couple seasons at Independence High School. Jordan Williams, 2nd season at Texas State. Roy Williams' son, the wide receiver from Texas. That's Jordan Williams. Arvis Battle, who is more of a pass catcher than a blocker, but he was a true freshman this past season. Wonder if they'll try and use him in his size. and then the true freshman, Russell Crawford, coming in. So 7 tight ends. They're pretty set there. They don't use them a whole lot in passing or anything. They look for blockers, and we know Blake Smith, Ty Stamey have already proven themselves. Maybe Cole Snodgrass can get into that Titus Lyons spot. Very similar to Titus Lyons, a walk-on to a scholarship player. So they are solid at tight end. At the tackle position, this one, tackle, guard, center. It's hard at this point until we get to spring football. Hopefully they let us in there, let us see what's happening with this team a little bit more to know who's playing tackle, who's playing guard, because they don't go with the traditional way of playing your big tall player, your biggest tallest player at tackle. They like to move some of these guys interior, even at the center position. They are and so and they move guys around. That's the big thing. Like Brock Riker last year moving over to center. That was a little bit of a surprise up until the season. But tackle, I have 11 players that I'm pretty sure are going to play tackle, either right or left tackle. Right off the bat, we have a returner in Sully Burns. It's his 3rd year at Texas State, 6'7", 330 pounds. Saw him start at right tackle last year. Could even move to left tackle. We'll see what they're thinking with Dorian Strawn now out the door, that they may need to put a player that is a little more experienced in the system out there, because otherwise it's some new players that I have at the top of the rotation at the tackle position, because one of the starters will be Sully Burns. The other tackle is between 3, maybe even 4 players that I'm about to list, and we'll start with Amari Smith. He's coming over from Northwest Mississippi Community College. I'm pretty sure that's what that acronym I have right there, that abbreviation I have for that college. 6'6", 330 pounds. Had a lot of big-time offers. I know they're pretty excited about Amari Smith coming over. I also have Rashid Jackson. He's coming over from TCU. Started his career at Incarnate Word, so that's the relationship with G.J. Kinney. He is 6'7", 330 pounds. Just the size. Massive, massive guys. And I was talking about the 38 players brought in for this 2026 class. 19 of those 38 are on the offensive, or on both of the lines, the line of scrimmage. 8 of them on the offensive line. Just a lot of beef coming in, a lot of linemen coming in. But Rashid Jackson, I feel like he's really going to compete for a starting position, if not in that rotation at 6'7", 330. His relationship, the UIW connection, I think helps him a lot. Alan Grimmy coming into his 2nd season after transferring him from Jones College. We didn't see him a whole lot last year, but he's a pretty good player at 6'5", 328. Same with Cameron Schultz. They were teammates at Jones College and transferred into Texas State together. Cameron Schultz, 6'4", 290. Jaden Luckett is the player coming over from Palomar College, San Marcos, the San Marcos connection, looking like he's going to play some tackle, 6'6", 280 pounds. Some players that have been on the team for a while, younger players that have developed for a while. Bamadil Badusi, 4th year. It's going to be his 4th year at Texas State for Bamadil Badusi. He was a really good prospect out of high school, and I've been expecting Badusi to get in there and play for a while. 6'6", 320 pounds for Badusi. We'll see if this is the year that he finally breaks through that rotation. Kirk Gilden, he was a true freshman this past year. He's coming into his 2nd season, 6'6", 285. Tegan Lindsay is a true freshman, 6'4", 280. Seems like a developmental guy. Needs to add some weight, but he's looking like a tackle from his scouting tape. And then Terrence Brown. Terrence Brown is also a true freshman coming in from Shoemaker High School, 6'4", 320 pounds. He could also be an interior lineman. I have 11 tackles listed. He could be someone that I see them moving to the interior of the offensive line at guard or at center. So that's 11 tackles. I would say solid for the tackle position when we go with the old adage, a pair and a spare. And you look at 11 of them there, they have plenty to spare on this depth chart. Same with guard. I have 10 guards. A lot of potential at guard. Solid designation for them. The very first guard I have listed, not sure right or left guard. Saw him a lot at right guard this past season. But I like to start with returners at the depth chart. Justin DeLeon, he's coming in his 4th year as well, like Badusi. 6'3", 330 pounds for Justin DeLeon. Seems like from G.J. Kinney, his press conference, he was a pretty coveted player in the transfer portal. They were able to hang on to Justin DeLeon. Next up, I have William Boone. He's a player that could play tackle or guard. I know I have some good notes from him from G.J. Kinney. I have him listed at guard, but he could very well move over to tackle. William Boone, yeah, he was a starter at North Carolina last season before injury, starting for Bill Belichick. Can play guard or tackle. He's huge. He has 11-inch hands. He has the Kilgore connection with Coach Greg. A lot of Kilgore connections going around. The Keelan Graves went to high school there. Same with Cameron Christian, the true freshman coming in. But Terry Webb, Brian Holloway, Matthew Gregg coached and played there. So there's a lot of connection there. That's why it was important for them to bring him in. And when I was talking about coaches, I guess I didn't mention that Coach Greg is now in charge of defensive recruiting. I may have mentioned that on the last episode, but he got a bit of a label change, a job change for him, but a bit of I would call it a raise. I'd call it a promotion. I guess it's all kind of relative when they're switching around job names and job titles. But yes, Justin DeLeon, William Boone, that's who we were on. 6'6", 340 pounds for William Boone. They're pretty excited about him, whether at guard or tackle. I could definitely see him being a starter, one of these new guys who will start. Same for Jalen Early. He's of all the transfer portal guys coming in, he is the for sure interior offensive lineman at guard. Could see them maybe even moving him to center, but I have him at guard for right now. 6'4", 320 pounds out of Mizzou, Jalen Early. Atuni Rapidi, it's going to be his second year. He transferred over from UTSA, number 55 out there. He got in at guard quite a little bit when there were some injuries. 6'5", 323 for Rapidi. Amir Ross, it's going to be his second year out of Duncanville. He's huge, 6'5", 385 pounds is what he's listed at. So I imagine a guy that size, he's got to get in there at some point. They love to play those big guys at guard. So that's why I have him listed as a guard. I think I like Lysander last season, that massive guy that they only got one and done out of Lysander. But Ian Langford, third year at Texas State after coming over from Trinity Valley Community College, 6'5", 310 pounds. Tyler Norris, it's his third year as well. A lot of young guys who've been waiting in the wings, developing with Jordan Shoemaker. I think this might be a year we see some of these guys. But Tyler Norris, 6'4", 306. Aiden Rhodes, fourth year at Texas State, 6'3", 283 pounds for Aiden Rhodes. Preston Ward's his second year, 6'2", 301 pounds. Then Eric Perkins, he's a true freshman, 6'5", 330, coming over from Marshall, Texas. A lot of guys coming over from Marshall, Texas. But I have solid for guard and a solid designation for tackle. But center I have so-so because I only have one listed center, Ezra Dotson-Oyatade. He's the only player that I know for sure is a center. I thought he was going to be the starter last year before Brock Riker overtook him, and now Brock Riker is off to Penn State. So now Ezra Dotson-Oyatade, he's the one guy on the roster that is a center. But I imagine they're going to move some guys, maybe Jalen Early, the new guy from Mizzou, they'll move him to center. Maybe there's some other guys they're looking at the guard position that can snap the ball and move him to center. But right now, I just have one center. So that's a position I'm going to be watching in spring ball to see. But if you're keeping track at home, that's every position is solid that I have designated except for center. And that's only because I feel like some of the list of offensive linemen I just gave you, I feel like some of those might be playing center. We will find out. But that's the offensive side. That was around 50 names. You having fun? Are we in there? I'll do it a little quicker on the defensive side of the ball. But there's a lot of changes there as well. G.J. Kinney mentioned that the defensive line was the biggest focus in the transfer portal, and boy, did they prove that. They brought in 11 players for the 2026 class on the defensive line. It went from a position of deficit to a position of surplus when I went through and I was mapping it out. I also appreciated the way G.J. Kinney, when he talked about the defensive line, he said that they only brought in players that they coveted, like their first choice. This is somebody that we know we can probably get. We want this player. We're going to pursue him. They didn't have to settle. Really felt like he had to settle a lot more. He wasn't as revealing last season after the transfer portal, but really more revealing last week at his press conference where it felt like they had to settle for certain players. hence the revamping of the defensive line and bringing in 11 guys, including 6 from the transfer portal. But as with Will Wyndham, not exactly sure on what the base defense is going to look like. So we're going to stick with the 4-2-5, and we're going to have defensive tackles, defensive ends, 2 linebackers, 2 safeties, 2 corners, in the nickel position. We'll stick with that because we know he'll run that sometimes, but it may look a little different. Might be a 3 down front, might be a 4 down front. We're not sure. But we're going to assume it's a 4 down for right now because that's what Texas State has been doing the last few years. We will change this up after spring football, though. Let's start at defensive tackle. I have 8 defensive tackles. There's a few of them that might play defensive end. I'm not sure, but most of them I'm pretty certain they will play tackle. Like right at the top, J.P. Dieter, 6'3", 290, was the Arizona State transfer. He's going to be in his second year at Texas State. Played sparingly, didn't play a whole lot, but with some guys entering the transfer portal, we saw Cameron Washington go to Baylor. We saw Jordan Sanders. He left as well. Some players graduated, some left. They really needed some interior defensive linemen, and J.P. Dieter sticking around. I think he's going to be rewarded for that and moved up the rotation. And he's a really good player, 6'3", 290. He's a younger player as well. Really, when you look at him, he reminds me a lot of Levi Bell, taller Levi Bell. If you remember Levi Bell, really, really successful career at Texas State. Just the body type, very compact. Very it seems like a bear to deal with, that defensive tackle. But next to him, my assumed starter, Tay Woody, coming over from ULM. Looks like he's just going to have 1 year at Texas State. 6'4", 315 pounds. Really nice job at ULM and UAB after starting his career at FSU. So this is his 4th year at Texas State. GJ Kennedy said he didn't enjoy having to game plan for Tay Woody, so he's glad that he is on Texas State's side now. So Tay Woody, big man in the middle of the defensive line. I'm expecting him to be a starter. Behind him, I have Caleb James, came over from Arkansas. Looked like he was going to be a defensive end, but Kenny said he's going to play him at defensive tackle, which tells me they're going to do some interesting stuff with this defensive front. But Caleb James, 6'4", 280, looked like somebody who would be like a quintessential defensive end, but they are moving him to defensive tackle. Josiah Ali, I've mentioned him before, coming over from Trinity Valley Community College. He is already here for spring practice and everything. He is 6'3", 303 pounds, had a bunch of G6 offers. Now it's, hey, now we're here in 2026. Now it's the G6. Got to start saying that. But he had a whole lot of G6 offers out there for Josiah Ali, so I'm pretty sure he's going to break into that rotation because we've seen what they do with this defensive line. Even though I listed Dieter and Woody as the starters, we know they're going to rotate quite a bit. They change out every series. Sometimes they'll change out the whole defensive line unit. They switch guys in and out in the middle of series. So there's going to be a lot of maneuvering with these defensive linemen. Below Ali, these are players that might get more playing time, but not exactly sure because we haven't seen him around. Zephaniah Amosa, he's a Sewell Ross transfer coming into his second year, 6'1", 300 pounds for Amosa. We have not seen much from him yet, but a younger guy who could get in the rotation. Jarvis Bell is coming into his second year, 6'1", 300 pounds, another young guy that they brought in out of high school. Cameron Christian, he's going to be a true freshman. May not play a whole lot as a true freshman, but he's got a lot of potential. And same for Braylon Young coming over from Denton High School. So they've got some young guys. They've got let's see, what it's that, 6 guys who have played quite a bit at the collegiate level. 4 guys who played quite a bit at the collegiate level, and the other 4 are pretty young at that defensive tackle position. At defensive end, I have also a solid designation. They have 12 defensive ends that I have. And again, who knows, maybe some shifting. Guys might bump inside on the defensive line. But my starter, another returner, Jolazin Landry. I mentioned it earlier. He got hurt in the first half of the first game, and his whole season was wiped out. But he is got a lot of potential, 6'3", 250 pounds. I think he's going to be their main pass rusher this season coming up. So Joe Landry, excited that he's going to be back. He's going to be paired with some new guys, though, a lot of new guys. The one that I feel like separates himself from the other of the new guys, Philip Bradford, the McNeese State transfer, 6'6", 280 pounds. He can play D end or D tackle, so he might be a player they might move around quite a bit. But he's coming over with Coach G, the defensive line coach at McNeese, now the defensive line coach at Texas State. And he was a game wrecker. I really liked what he was able to do at McNeese. So I have a feeling he's going to get in there and be a starter for Texas State. He'll have some competition from other transfers, though. Mekhi Buchanan coming over from Virginia, 6'4", 245. Really got that quintessential edge rusher body type. Chancellor Owens, he's another guy who could play inside or outside. He's coming over from Arizona after starting his career at Northwestern State. 6'3", 260 pounds for Chancellor Owens. Got a lot of praise from G.J. Kinney. Let me go to some of these D linemen because G.J. Kinney had some good stuff to say about him. Let's see. Chancellor Owens, connection to Coach G. I guess going back to Northwestern State because that's where Coach G was before McNeese. There was a connection there. Instant experience, which when he said that, that's like, okay, this is a player he's gonna play a lot. Yeah, because he even said that. That's actually the next note I have. A quote from G.J. Kinney. He's gonna play a lot. So there you go, Chancellor Owens. He's gonna get in there. But looking at some other notes from like Tay Woody, interior D lineman, he had a lot of P4 offers. I don't think I mentioned that. And they wanted to add size, and he said Tay Woody reminded him of Terry Webb that was here a couple years ago. So nice praise for him. Below Chancellor Owens, below some of these new guys are actually guys who proved themselves at Texas State last season and maybe above these players. Not sure what's going to happen. We'll see what the competition brews up in spring practice. But Dontarie Russell, we saw him last season, 6'4", 230 pounds. He had some success. Same with Tadarius Collins, 6'4", 250 pounds. To be naming those two players this far down the list at the depth chart at defensive end gives me a lot of confidence for that position. I mean, those are guys that could be starters. I even, maybe even going into the offseason before they got this haul in the transfer portal, I was looking at those guys as potential starters. And now I'm looking at them as third, fourth string guys even. But, third, fourth string guys get a lot of playing time in this defense that they've developed here in San Marcos. Below Tadarius Collins, I have Jason Patterson. He's a new player, transferred in from Texas Southern. 6'3", 235 pounds. G.J. Kinney likes what he has to bring, but he said he's a developmental guy himself, so he'll have to wait a little bit. Some other developmental guys. Dante Keys was a true freshman last season. Cullen Thompson, one of the highest recruited Texas State players ever. I think he was the highest rated defensive player ever coming out of high school. Cullen Thompson, edge rusher himself. But as I said, they're pretty deep at this defensive end position, and they don't like to play true freshmen a whole lot, so I think he may have to wait his turn. Simeon Garner was a true freshman last year. He will be back. Blake Isbell, a really good true freshman himself. He'll be back as well. Those are guys who just didn't play a whole lot. And the very last defensive end I have listed, and it might not be fair to Nathan Baudry, but Nathan Baudry is the very last one I have listed. 6'6", 260 pounds out of Garden City Community College. He's from France. He's pretty new to football, but he's got great size and a lot of potential. I imagine he's got to develop a little bit more. He's a younger guy as well. But Nathan Baudry is my last one listed there. A pretty good defensive end unit, especially after the haul of the between Philip Bradford, Mekhi Buchanan, Chancellor Owens, adding those guys to the mix with Joe Lazen Landry, Dontarie Russell, Tadarius Collins. I'm pretty excited about defensive end for Texas State. Linebacker, I put a solid designation, but it might need some fine-tuning. It really depends on if they're planning on playing 2 or 3. If they're playing 2, pretty solid. If they're going with 3, it might need some work, might need some fine-tuning. But for now, I'm going to call it solid because I have 8 players for them. Another returner at the starting position there with Aiden Jones. It's his second year at Texas State. Didn't start a whole lot, but he did have 56 tackles after his first year from Prairie View A&M. I really like. He's got a lot of spunk. I would see him get in some guys' faces and talk a lot of trash and play above his role sometimes. So I appreciated that from Aiden Jones. He's going to have some competition. This is a real open position, I feel, linebacker as far as starters and who's going to emerge. One player who has a lot of experience that I expect to be a starter is a new guy coming over from Arkansas State, Javonte Mackey. Now, he's a guy, he's listed at defensive end, so he might end up playing on the D-line, but he's a big guy, 6'1", 250. I know they appreciate that big linebacker. Cole Nils is another player I'm about to talk about. He's a bigger linebacker. Get in there and stop that run. So I imagine they'll still want him at linebacker, and I see him as a starter when I look at this linebacker unit and what they have to offer. It's the guy, his first 2 years he spent at Arkansas State, played really well there, went to Memphis, didn't have such a great year at Memphis, came back to Arkansas State, didn't play a whole lot. Don't know if injury happened or what happened last year. Seems like his last chance to get in there. I know I made some notes about Mackey. Yeah, freshman All-American before he got hurt at Memphis. That was the note I made. He got hurt at Memphis. So that messed up his one lone year with the Tigers before going back to Jonesboro. He was hurt, but he was at one point a freshman All-American. So talented player right there at linebacker. Right below him, I have Cole Nils, who I mentioned earlier. He's a really good player himself. Did I put his tackles? Yeah, 29 tackles, 3 TFLs last year. Didn't start any games or anything. 6'4", 240 pounds, similar size to Javonte Mackey. So it would be kind of fun. You have both. If you have 2 linebackers and both of them are just absolute units, it'd be a lot of fun to watch. I don't know how much pass coverage goes into guys that size, though. That's the one thing, and you might need that. But Cole Nils, younger guy, originally from Philadelphia. You don't see that a whole lot. But I expect him to play a lot more in his second season with the Bobcats. Below Cole Nils, I have Jordan Sample. Coming in, will be his first year at Texas State, transferring over from Arkansas State. G.J. Kinney said Jordan Sample is the best special teams player in the Sun Belt. So now he's at Texas State. Said he is definitely going to play special teams for Texas State, but anticipates an increased role on defense because he was 3 years at Arkansas State. They didn't play him a whole lot on defense. He's coming to Texas State to get that. So if not a starter, very much in the rotation. It's like I was saying earlier, they switch out. The front seven, specifically on defense, they switch out a lot. Defensive line, they're switching out every other series. Same with linebackers. Below Jordan Sample, I have a young guy, second year coming up, TJ Burkhalter. Played a little bit as a true freshman this past season. 6'2", 235, 240. Another big linebacker. They like those big linebackers. He appeared in 5 games with 2 tackles. Was in the right position, though. I noticed him number 56 out there. When he'd get out there, he was in the he didn't look out of place for a true freshman. He was swarming around the ball and doing everything, even though he didn't get a ton of stats. He was doing the right stuff. Colt Sparks, we didn't see him play a lot. Another bigger linebacker, 6'3", 240 pounds. He was a high school He was a quarterback at Sabine High School. So a quarterback turned linebacker for Colt Sparks. He was a true freshman last year, so I imagine he's got some developing to do there. Darius Davis is another guy at linebacker. He will be a true freshman coming over from San Marcos High School. He was the lone player to practice with the team leading into the bowl game, so he's getting ahead of the curve a little bit. And then the last linebacker I have listed, I don't know if he's coming back, but he's still on the depth chart. It seems like he has another year. It's Carson Kaiser, who to me is one of the most fascinating stories that we definitely don't talk about nearly enough. Mainly because he doesn't get in there or anything, but he transferred over from New Mexico State after being a quarterback at New Mexico State, transferred to Texas State, and switched to linebacker. I've been trying to see if that experiment will work and he can break through the rotation at linebacker, but part of the appeal to him transferring back, he's from Bernie. That's another reason he sticks out in my mind. It's where my parents live. So I'm quietly watching Carson Kaiser, see what he can do. But I would say pretty solid at linebacker, but that's TBD. That might change really when it depends on what kind of scheme they're going to put in their base form and really work out of mainly. Cornerback, real solid, very solid. I like cornerback quite a bit. Excited to talk about cornerback despite losing some guys like Kamari Terrell and really not a ton of guys left. But Craig Royal Jr. coming back, I think that's their best starter coming back at corner. Didn't start a whole lot last year, but when he broke through the rotation, did really well. I wish I made a note where he transferred in from Texas to Texas State from. Pretty sure it was a community college or a junior college. Always like these players that come up from junior college. I feel like they come in hungrier with a lot of grit and are really wanting to prove themselves. You get a lot of these bounce backs, bounce backs that went to a P4, wasn't what they expected, so now they come down a level. I feel like the hunger isn't as apparent in those players as it is to some of these JUCO players. But yeah, I really like Craig Royal Jr. Taller corner. They like tall corners, something they've been trying to collect more and more over the last couple seasons. And Craig Royal at 6'2". The other side at corner, I'm pretty sure Craig Royal is one of the starters. The other starter, it could be a handful of other guys, but the first guy I put there is the most experienced, so I put him there, even though it could very well be wrong. It's Dexter Ricks. He's transferring over from Liberty. He was a 3-year starter at Liberty. G.J. Kinney raved about him, talked about how his dad is a high school AD, and he just has a lot of high character. So I anticipate Dexter Ricks getting into the lineup early after just transferring him from Liberty. But right below him, I have Christopher Jones. Chris Jones, who got in there last season, the 100-yard touchdown, pick 6. He's a young guy who wasn't starting, but he broke into the rotation towards the end of the year. I expect him to be out there competing. So if Ricks and Royal are starting over him, Jones will be right there competing and in the rotation. Same for Malik Willis. We didn't see a whole lot from Malik Willis. He's another taller corner at 6'2". He had 20 tackles last year, so he played quite a bit. So I anticipate him having an increased role now that he's returning for a second season at Texas State. I'm pretty sure he came over from Campbell, the Campbell Camels. I think I didn't make that note here, but I think that's where he came from. Cordarian Powell, C.D. Powell. We saw him get in there as a true freshman. I mentioned earlier they don't like playing true freshmen. We saw C.D. Powell get in there as a true freshman, so that tells me his playing time is going to increase in his second season. 2 pass defenses, not a whole lot of stats, but another 6'1", taller corner. And Jaden Lawton, who I have talked about a lot on this pod. I talked about him last offseason. I anticipated him being a starter in 2025. Injuries stopped him from playing at all in 2025, but this was a player who he's bounced around quite a bit, went P4, went JUCO. Now he's at Texas State. Before Texas State was able to secure him last offseason, he had a ton of offers from P4 programs, from fellow G6 programs. He had a lot of offers, a real coveted player. And a 6'3", really big corner. I'm excited about Jaden Lawton, and he's back. After not playing his first year at Texas State, he is going to come back, which might be the first time in his career where he has consecutive seasons at one spot. So I think that might be big for him. Another young guy that got in there last year, Greg Gibson Jr., 6'1", taller corner. They'd put him at safety and move him around quite a bit. So Greg Gibson, I think he's going to break through. And Jaden Fordenoy is a true freshman at a Burleson high school. They might need to. They like to develop the true freshmen, as I've mentioned before. And I have a question mark for a 9th corner, potentially Trez Moore. Anybody remember Trez Moore, who's one of Texas State's best corners in 2024? Didn't play at all in 2025 with an injury. 2025 was supposed to be his last year, but I know with medical waivers and everything, not sure if he's coming back or what the deal is with Trez Moore, but there might be another one in there. So pretty good at corner, I would say. Safety is the one defensive position that I have so-so, where might need some work, might need some tweaking. Who knows? Maybe they move some of these corners I was just talking about. Maybe they move them over to safety. But safety is the one position where I'm not the most confident when I'm looking through the depth chart and everything. I am confident at the top. Ryan Nolan coming back, second leading tackler last season, really emerged as a leader on this team. He's coming into his 3rd season at Texas State. I think it was massive to get him back because right now I only have 5 safeties at 2 safety positions, just 5. So when we was talking about the pair and a spare, that old adage, they've got it at most positions we've talked about. They do not have that at safety. But Ryan Nolan coming back, that was big because he entered the portal. They were able to convince him to come back. Big player to have come back. Next to him, I anticipate Chase Davis, although there's going to be some competition at the other safety. Chase Davis, who's a Utah State transfer. His first season was last year at Texas State. 13 tackles, didn't play a whole lot. But when he did get in there, he did look pretty good. Tice Williams, his 3rd year at Conroe High School. He's done some great things on special teams since coming to Texas State out of high school. Anticipate him getting a bigger role at that safety position. He was a really coveted player out of high school. Jaden Bradley was a true freshman last season, no playing time, but he was very coveted himself, and G.J. Kinney had a lot of praise for Jaden Bradley. So I could even see Jaden Bradley going from no playing time last year as a true freshman to a starter this upcoming season. So keep an eye on Jaden Bradley. I feel like he's got some family that listens to the pod. They've been in the comments hyping him up since he got here. So shout out to Jaden Bradley. He's going to get out there. We're going to talk about him. I saw he's born in Pensacola, Florida as well. Shout out to Pensacola, Florida. That's where my grandparents live. Where were we? I know we got one more. And then John Smith at safety. Now, I put John Smith at safety. He's transferring in. He's a player transferring from Colorado State. Younger guy, hasn't played a whole lot. He's a speedster, was a track star in high school and everything. 6'3". But he's somebody that I don't know if he's going to play corner or what he's going to play. Let me see what my notes from Kinney were on our guy John Smith right here. John Smith, versatile but young, could potentially play other positions than corner. That's why I listed him at safety. And I know they need help at safety. So even that fifth player listed at safety is a brand new guy who might not even be a safety. So it's some really good players I named, just not a lot of them. I think they might see some players move over to safety. And there's a sixth player that might be coming back, Darius Jackson. But you remember him, the Mizzou transfer. Seemed like he was injured last season. Might have another year of eligibility. Haven't heard if he's in the transfer portal or not. So they may have another one, but for right now I have 5 at the safety position. And 4 that I know play safety. So they're going to need to do something there at that position on the back end of the defense. Going to nickel, the fifth DB that they use at that position, I have 3 players, and that may not seem like a lot, but I call that pretty solid because that's what they had on the depth chart the last few years. Just 3 that they designated this one corner position. It's a mix, it's a hybrid between corner, safety, linebacker where they line up. You know, sometimes they're guarding the slot receiver. Other times they're getting in there to stop the run. You kind of need a special breed of DB to play that nickel position. And I know they have 2 guys returning that we saw play there last season, and they have another new player that I anticipate them moving to nickel. But their starter at nickel, I have Will Mitchell II. If you didn't catch his name, it's because he only played the first 3 games of the season, played really well, and then he was injured for the rest of the year. He was one when I was talking about Brett Huth and how well they've done keeping these players healthy. He was one that went out. I know it was an arm injury. Not exactly sure what happened there with Will Mitchell. But when he was getting out there, he's a great player. He's also a track star in high school. This was a talented guy that finally got his shot that was taken away real quick. But he was replaced with another young guy who finally got his shot after a few years playing with Kinney's staff. 4th season for Amarian Wood coming up. Last season he had 30 tackles getting in there at that nickel position for Will Mitchell. Admirable, started out a little bumpy, then he started to really settle in and get his bearings in this college football world. So getting Amarian Atwood back is pretty good. 2 guys who return after multiple seasons at Texas State. And then Michael Patterson coming over. He's coming over from SFA, I'm pretty sure. Is that SFA? Yes, SFA for Michael Patterson, another high school track star. They love getting the high school track stars, 10.5 and the 100 in high school. He's a versatile DB. G.J. Kinney noted he can play all 3 defensive back positions. I've noticed when G.J. Kinney says that about a defensive back, he usually puts them at that nickel position because it is a guy who needs to be versatile, is able to take on a lot of different responsibilities, and that's what they need out of the nickel. So that's where I see Michael Patterson III playing nickel, coming over from SFA. Let's go to special teams. Kicker. I put solid because they have 3. I mentioned Tyler Robles. He's out of here. They were able to go get Dylan Cunin out of Toledo, 72% on his field goals out of Toledo. They go and get a really good kicker. Even mentioned how they're kicker U. They're able to get these players like Shipley goes off to Texas. Robles goes off to the P4. You look at the national championship, there's Brendan Frankie kicking off for the Hoosiers. So Texas State has done really well with the kickers. I don't expect any less from Dylan Cunin coming in. But below him, they have Michael James. He's coming back. They'll use their kickoff man for Texas State. And then Jacob Bonilla. is right behind James. So they have 3 kickers right now after Robles left. At punter, they have 2 Aussies. I remember Tom Flintoff because we've talked about him before. I kind of forgot about Nick Salmon, who's also an Aussie. So they have 2 Australian punters. They're going to compete for it after David Nunez. He graduated. So that punter position is up for grabs between Tom Flintoff and Nick Salmon. An Aussie battle at punter. I have solid designations for kicker and punter. At long snapper, I have so-so. Just because, and yes, I did add long snapper because I needed a 100th position or 100th name on this, and this is name number 100. Darren Snell at long snapper. He hasn't snapped yet for Texas State. Austin Turner graduated, so they need a long snapper. He hasn't gotten in there. But usually you'd like to have 2, but right now they just have 1 on roster. So I imagine they're going to go out there and find another one. If you can snap the ball between your legs and you have some eligibility, go out there and try out for that one. But there you go. 100 names I just named for you. 105 limit for this team. So there's 5 that we're missing there somewhere. Who knows where they'll pop up. But Texas State's roster is pretty set. As you can tell, heading into spring football, so they have a lot of good things coming up. I'm pretty excited when I look at this depth chart, and when I go through, it's one position at all 3 phases. There's only one position that I have a so-so. Like I'm not extremely confident at that. On offense, it's at center. On defense, it's at safety, and on special teams, it's at long snapper. For the most part, to be as confident as I am this early and know that this is going to be the roster at the end of spring. This is what it's going to look like. Pretty great stuff. I'm excited for Texas State 2026. This episode has gone way too long already. Can't believe I talked that long about a depth chart in January, but here we are. That's just the time of year it is right now. This was a great episode, though. Make sure you check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/WinNowOrGetBent. We're going to be doing some cool stuff there in 2026. A lot of fun stuff coming up. A lot of fun stuff with the merch as well. You see I have the Sailor Boco Texas State sweater now. I'll be busting out some Win Now or Get Bent merch coming up here soon. If you're not watching on YouTube, check us out, youtube.com/WinNowOrGetBent. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Sign up a friend. Start an account for them. Start commenting for them. Just misquote them. Oh, man, I don't want to get you in a jam. You might get sued there. But you just help us out. Any way you can help us grow, any of the interactions, the comments, the likes, all that stuff, it helps us grow more and more. Check us out on Twitter at WinNowOrGetBent and on TikTok and Instagram at WNOGB. Like, subscribe, comment on all our platforms. If you're an audio head like me, and you're a busy guy and you got to listen to the pod on the go, make sure you're subscribed on those platforms so it automatically downloads. If you can leave a comment or a rating or anything, please hook us up with that as well. So thank you to you audio heads tuning in right now. Thank you to TGC LLC, thegalindocollective.com, and to my guy, our great producer, Zachary Webb. Shout out to my guy, Zach Webb. We need some Wizard Wednesday in our life, man. He's going to get back on the horse soon. I know it. And of course, thanks to all of you for always tuning in. We'd be shouting into the void if it wasn't for you. We're going to be talking lots of football all off season. We're going to get caught up on basketball as well, too. 12-11 for Texas State basketball. Up and down, very up and down. They lose to the JMUs of the world, and then they beat Marshall. It's hard to get a grip on this team. But the 8 games left, they could really, I'd like to see this team, even if it's like 1 or 2 tournament wins, get to that 20th win in a season. I think that'd be a good barometer of success for this Texas State men's basketball team. But, it's going to be a lot coming up with the Pac-12, so they've got to do some things to fix that. Obviously, you can tell I want to talk about basketball, but I spent too long on this episode doing it. So we'll do a mailbag next episode. Some of you get some basketball questions ready for me, some baseball questions, some whatever questions, personal life questions, anything you got, and of course football. Whatever you got, get those ready. We'll do a mailbag. I'll call for it on Twitter, and we'll get that for the next episode so I can hear from y'all. And then after that, we'll do an interview. I've got some interviews lined up, some good ones. I want to do some good interviews in 2026. So we've got some fun stuff coming up. But we wouldn't be able to do any of it without you. That was a long way to get there, huh? We can't do any of it without you. We'd be shouting into the void. So thank you to all you sickos for always tuning in and making this thing possible and allowing us to continue our passion talking about these Bobcats. But all right, that'll do it. We'll put episode 221 in the bag. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Until next time, win now or get bent.